Hey everyone, it's Miss McClellan. Today we're going to be talking about the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution did start in Great Britain, and then it spread to other parts of the world. First it spread to France, and then Germany, and then all over Europe, and eventually everywhere else. People disagree about when it started. Some historians say it started in the 1780s. Others say it started in 1815 after Napoleon's defeat. But for our purposes, we're going to kind of be working with the years 1800 to 1850. And the Industrial Revolution was a series of changes in technology, the way people traded, the way people farmed, the way people mined. And these changes didn't just change trade and mining. They changed entire ways of life. It changed the way that people lived. Some examples of that. The power of the nobility declined. The middle and the working class became more important. Because there were more people living in cities, there was a drop in rural populations. Education became more important because people needed specific skills to work in factories. There was a development of the railway system that transformed the way people traveled for personal reasons, and it really increased the way that people traded. In the domestic sphere, in people's homes, most people had telephones and electricity, which is something that we all take for granted today, but it was a really big deal back then. Before the Industrial Revolution, most countries in Europe were agrarian, and that means that they farmed the land. That's how they lived. They needed it to live. Everyone could live off the land. You had the higher classes who owned the land, and then you have the peasants who worked on the land. They farmed on the land. They could maybe live on it, but they didn't really profit from it. Then you have people like craftsmen and traders. They depended on the land indirectly. Because the things that they made were made from things from the land. Even the church were dependent on the land because their income, some of the clergymen's income came from taxes that were paid to the church. And a lot of the taxes that were paid to the church were paid in kind. And all of this means is that they were paid through the use of goods and services rather than money. So someone might give them a little bit of land or something that they farmed from the land. I just want to show you guys this chart to sort of help you understand how people moved from agrarian, depending on the land, to industrial. Okay, so before the Industrial Revolution, everyone's dependent on the land. Everyone can live on the land. The land is enough. But then some causes of the Industrial Revolution happen, and we're about to talk about those. And because of those causes, the land can no longer support everyone. The land is not enough. So you need something else. And this is where the Industrial Revolution comes in. There's a need for industry. And that's just the processing of raw materials and manufacture of goods in factories. So you need these factories because there are no longer enough goods and enough jobs from the land. You need something else. The first cause of the Industrial Revolution that we're going to talk about is changes in pre-industrial society. Before the 19th century, methods of farming changed really slowly. People didn't communicate very often, so if someone found a new way to do something like, say, fertilizer, it didn't really spread. And furthermore, the peasants didn't really have a lot of motivation to improve the farming because if they farmed faster and better, they didn't really benefit from that. Their bosses did. Feudalism was abolished in Britain by the 18th century. However, and we all know that feudalism is the system where the land is owned by the nobles and peasants live on the land. They farm the land, and in exchange, they just get to live on the land. But they have no rights. They're totally under control of their owners. It's sort of basically a step up from slavery. But even though feudalism had been abolished, the peasants are still suffering. After feudalism was abolished, the nobles, the landowners said, okay, we don't have as many peasants now, or workers, we got to figure out a way to produce things more efficiently. So they combined all their small farms into big ones. So this meant that there was less work for the peasants. If they had one big farm, they could farm more efficiently with less workers. So there aren't enough jobs for all of them. And if there's a poor harvest, if there's, a drought and there's not enough food for them to eat. So They don't have jobs and they're starving. So life for peasants is still pretty bad even though feudalism has been abolished. So I want you to just quickly write in your notes, how did this change of there not being enough food and work for peasants, how would that cause people to move from agrarian to an industrial society? The next cause we're going to talk about is population growth. In Great Britain, the population increased from 7.5 million in 1750 to 20 million in 1840. So that's a lot of population growth in a very short amount of time. This population growth happened partially because food could be distributed more easily. There are better roads, lots of medical advances, which led to longer lifespans, death rates lowered. So people are living longer. They're dying less often. And so since there's more people, there's a greater demand for food, for products, for jobs. And so again, think about how would this change cause people to move from agrarian to industrial. The last cause that we're going to talk about is changes in communications, roads, and canals. Before the Industrial Revolution, Britain, France, and Germany, they depended on horses for land, and then they depended on rivers to transport their goods. They didn't really have very good roads because there wasn't a lot of reason to travel from place to place. One big change that happened was instead of rivers being used, they started to use canals. So this was when rivers were widened and deepened to take on increased traffic, and canals could be sort of specifically designed to have a route that went towards a specific town or city that you wanted to trade with. And so this linked different cities together that traded and encouraged the expansion of villages along the routes, and the mass transport made the cost of carrying goods cheaper. So people are trading, they're buying and selling goods more often because it's easier and it's cheaper. Again, how would this change cause people to move from agrarian to an industrial society? Why did the Industrial Revolution begin in Great Britain? Why didn't it begin in France? Why not Germany? Great Britain had three specific things that made it sort of the prime spot for the Industrial Revolution to begin. First of all, it had land. They claimed colonies all around the world that provided them with lots of raw materials and resources. They also were located in a spot with lots of waterways and harbors that allowed them to transport goods. And they, as you know, had a growing population, and they often would employ children and women to work in their factories. Great Britain was also a wealthy country. They were stable, they had lots of capital, they had lots of wealth, and they currently weren't involved in any wars, so they weren't really in debt. So these three reasons all contributed to the Industrial Revolution starting in Great Britain as opposed to, say, France or Germany. All right, that's all the notes for tonight. Make sure you take notes, write your summary, and any questions you have. Have a good day.